Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book related content here on YouTube, and today I'll be sharing with you all my May wrap up. So I read 3 books in the month of May, as well as got through a decent chunk of the 4th one. In addition, I did a lot of reading for school. I'm currently in the midst of my 2nd semester of sophomore year, so I'm an English major and French major, so there's a lot of reading involved. So that kind of decreases the amount of time I have for reading on the side, but I still was able to read some really great books. May is also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I really wanted to celebrate that and read some more perspectives that I haven't really been exposed to. I am aware that not all of these authors are necessarily American, but I just really wanted to broaden my perspective and look at different areas of the world that I haven't really studied before, as well as the Asian American experience. So the first book I read in the month of May was The Garden of Evening Mists by Tan Tuan Ang, and this is actually a Malaysian author. This book takes place in Malaya in 1951. Young Ling To is a survivor of a brutal Japanese war camp, and she is just retired from her position as an esteemed judge because of a condition that she has developed, and she has gone back to this tea garden that she went to immediately after World War II ended. This book flips a lot between times. It does in the midst of World War II, before World War II, after, immediately after, significantly after, and it all revolves around this garden, hence the Garden of Evening Mists. The Garden of Evening Mists is a place of mystery. The head gardener, Eritimo, no one really knows why he's there because he is a Japanese gardener and he's in Malaya now. The main character, her sister died in the same war camp, and we don't really know what happened to her or how our main character escaped. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I thought that the landscape, specifically the gardens, the different types of gardens, the mountains and hills were beautifully described in this book. I thought that the author did a really, really good job with this. I also thought the immersion and blending of different cultures was fascinating. There was Malaysian culture, Chinese culture, British culture, Japanese culture, South African culture, a lot of different aspects going on, discussions about colonialism, discussions about tea and tea production and tea plantations. There was also really interesting perspective on the historical context of World War II in Malaya, as well as the communist movement that tried to rise up and was actually defeated, and it's one of the only communist risings that was defeated by the government. The biggest issue I had with this book was the characters. I did not find the main character, Young Ling To, to be very believable, and she was kind of two-dimensional. I struggled with that, and it was kind of the same for a lot of the other characters. So while I found the landscape itself was beautiful and so wonderful to read about and incredibly atmospheric, the characters I was really unable to connect with, and that made it hard for me to fully care about the story because there were some really powerful things going on, but the characters just didn't seem human to me, and I'm not really sure where that was stemming from. But I am glad I read this book because I learned a lot about World War II and Malaya and Japan and China. The second book I read in the month of May was The Little Prince, or Le Petit Prince. I read it in French. This is a pretty old edition. It actually has like illustrations, and it's kind of falling apart, but it was a beautiful edition. I checked it out from my library. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, it takes place with this pilot who lands in the desert, well, crash lands into the desert, and he's stranded, and he comes upon this little prince, and the little prince shares with him his voyage and travels, and then kind of it goes from there. This book I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I've been putting off reading it for quite some time because I wanted to get my hands on a French version. I wanted to be able to read it in French for the first time. My sister had already read it, my mom's already read it, they both loved it, and I was really excited to read it, and 5 out of 5 stars. It did not disappoint. This book hit my heart, it hit my soul, it got right in there. I thought it was beautiful, I thought it was lyrical. I really, really, really am glad I waited to read it in French because I found it to be that much more powerful, both beautiful and heartbreaking. I don't think the story is actually for children, even though it was marketed that way. It's definitely for people who have a childhood to look back on. Just found the language to be incredible as well as the illustrations. And by the end of the book, I was definitely sobbing. I love this book and I can't wait to own my own copy and add it to my collection. The third book I read in the month of May was a graphic novel, so that means I've read more than one graphic novel this year. I know, amazing. And that was Shortcomings by Adrian Tomine. This is actually like a part of a larger collection of Adrian's work. He does a lot of comic work. I believe this is part of the Optic Nerve collection. We have the main character who is Ben Tanaka, and he is pretty negative, doesn't really like his life. His girlfriend and him go on a break, which we all know that's never a good idea. And he's really struggling with who he is. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I also had very mixed feelings about this one. I think that Ben Tanaka is a really not likable main character. He is just kind of a grouch, super negative, pessimistic, does not have a really good outlook on life, does not really speak to his friends in like a very friendly manner. I was really drawn to him. Even though like I didn't really like him as a person, I totally could understand where he was coming from, and I think that that was a really good job on Adrian Tomine's part. I thought a lot of the characters were quite believable and they really came off the page, and even if they weren't likable or weren't people that I would necessarily be friends with, I definitely felt like they were real human beings. My greatest issue with this book was kind of twofold. I don't know if it's because I'm not the right audience, but I just didn't really get the plot of the book. I thought that it didn't really end up going anywhere by the end, and there was a lot of like openness at the end. I also had struggled with the language a little bit, and I know that in some cases different communities use language in different ways, and so I know that maybe I just don't understand that, but specifically to me, the use of the R word as well as a few other really offensive language did not really sit right with me, and it wasn't addressed within the book. I also just didn't really understand the point. I think I already said that, but I'm glad I gave it a chance. I probably won't be reading more of this series or more of this collection, but I was really interested to read more about Ben Tanaka because he's kind of infamous in the Goodreads reviews about how unlikable he was, and I was really impressed by Adrian Tomine's ability to make me like him. And the last book is a book I'm currently reading, but I actually got a decent way through. I'm currently on page 256 of Pachinko by Minjin Lee. I have been wanting to read this book ever since it came out. I've heard so many wonderful things about it, and I'm gonna predict right now this is going to be a 5 out of 5 stars. I am in love with this book. It is so amazing. The characters, the storyline, the culture that I'm learning about, the historical context, the community, the family dynamics, the friend dynamics, it is all there and I am loving it. It is definitely a hard read in sense of content, and there's a lot of difficult and challenging things that these characters have to face, but I am loving this book. This is definitely going to be the finish of my first read for the book of June, and I am so glad that I am reading this book. I highly recommend. I'll let you know in June when I eventually finish it what I thought of this book. Yeah, and I'm not really sure if anyone cares, but for school, I read a bunch of Plato, Descartes, Nietzsche. We read a decent chunk of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I'm reading a lot of eco-poetry. This is an eco-poetry anthology, so I'm reading a lot of that. And the book I'm reading for my French class right now is How Paris Became Paris, The Invention of the Modern City. This is in English because this class is open to both English speakers and French speakers. And then I'm reading Norton Anthology editions for British literature. We did neoclassical and romantic, so I read Alexander Pope, Samuel Johnson, we did Coleridge, Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, all of them. We're finally moving into the Victorian era next, but that's kind of what I'm reading for school. Kind of a shorter video because obviously I wasn't able to read as much this month, but I am so excited to continue to read in the month of June and obviously finish up school so I can read even more books later on this summer. If you have any book recommendations, video recommendations, please leave them down in the comments below. College vlogs will be coming back soon. I just wanted to get this video up next, and I will see you all next week.